Story 1. I found out my husband was cheating on me when he got arrested for disturbing the peace after he got into a very public fight with his affair partner. Now he's more upset she found out she's married than that our family has been torn apart. I'm 34 female, my husband is 38 male, and we have 3 children together, 6, 4, and 8 months. Early this morning, 2 a.m., I got a phone call from a police station in a neighboring town that my husband had been arrested. I needed to go pay and get him out. I was completely shocked. When I asked them what was going on, they said he got arrested for disturbing the peace after getting into an unreasonably loud verbal altercation with someone in a residential neighborhood, and not stopping even after the police got there. My first thought was that this wasn't my husband because, 1, my husband has never been a confrontational person at all. He's never gotten arrested before, and as far as I knew, he was working an overnight shift. But they insisted it was him, so I woke up our kids, packed them into the car, and went down to see what the hell was going on. When they went to get him, he was incredibly irritated. He didn't answer any questions. He said he didn't want to talk there, and then when we got to the car, he insisted on driving and told me to sit in the back to try to get the kids to go to sleep for the trip. They were all out of sorts because they were tired, confused, and not used to seeing their dad act so aggravated. By the time we got home and all of the kids were back asleep, it was about 6 a.m. And this entire time, he had been texting someone. So I finally just told him to tell me what the hell was going on, and who the person he was fighting with, and why he had lied about being at work. First, he told me a story that he had driven his coworker home after the coworker had gotten sick, and he had gotten into a fight with the coworker's girlfriend because she had thought he was lying to cover for him. But the story seemed fishy, and there was a lot of it that didn't make sense, but he was amending it the more he told it, so he was clearly making it up on the spot. And the whole time, he was still getting texts on his phone. So I told him to show me who was texting, and he refused. So I told him to tell me the real story. And eventually, he admitted he was cheating on me. And he has been for a while. And last night, his other woman found out he was married, and they got into a huge argument. I finally looked at his phone and saw what he had been texting the entire time. He was texting her, begging her for forgiveness, telling her that he was going to leave me, and he always planned on leaving me from the moment he fell in love with her. He was going to tell her, but he had wanted to wait until he had an apartment closer to her set up so he could show her he was serious. The entire night, he didn't even once say sorry to me or try to work things out. Today, he left for work after I found everything out and has only texted me, "working late." I know our relationship is over. I just wish he would have tried to at least fight for his family. It's like he doesn't even care what this is going to put our kids through. I don't know what advice I'm looking for, to be honest. Anything, I guess. There's the usual stuff. Like I said, not a legal expert, but, get the text messages, it sounds like he doesn't really care about the family at all. He even texted you right then when he was going to work. He was working late. He's still, out of habit, keeping up with the lie. I guess just, try and find a lawyer. It's gonna be rough. I don't know where you are, but I hope you can find some sort of safety for you and your kids. Story 2. My sister used to casually steal from my room. Many years ago, when I was 17 years old, I graduated from high school and moved into my mom's house where my other siblings lived, including my 15-year-old sister Nicole. I was what you might call a loser. I worked at a buffet, and I had a pay-as-you-go phone so I could call my mom to pick me up at the end of my shift. Nicole, on the other hand, had her own cell phone that she paid for. She had worked from a young age, and she spent a lot of money. She was a cool kid and would go out late at night with friends. My sister, at one point, was grounded from her phone by my mom and stepdad. She went into my room and stole my pay-as-you-go phone and drained it over the course of the few days she was actually grounded. I didn't even notice until it didn't function one day after work. She had used hundreds of minutes. I felt so violated because I even went as far as to hide my phone, and she still found it. Around that same time, I noticed that my change jar was much emptier than it had been, and that loose cash from around the room was missing as well. Around $200 in all. This girl was robbing me. I wasn't the only person she was robbing. She had gotten caught stealing clothes from name-brand stores at the mall. She was on juvenile probation. I wanted to get even. One day when she wasn't home, I walked into her room and grabbed an important-looking box from her closet. It was full of women's panties. I paused, shrugged, and took it away. The box was pretty full. I couldn't help but notice how much lace there was. I found out years later that my sister was sleeping around at this age. Heck, I'm no expert, but there were probably in excess of 40 pairs in that box. I took the box straight to the backyard and stuck it under an old canoe. I had never seen that canoe used, and it was now a fixture in the backyard. Nicole was furious. I could hear her on the phone accusing her friends of stealing her underwear. She only had the pair that she was wearing, and now she was broke. The loss of her underwear drove her up the wall for weeks. I'd never seen her so on edge. I learned yesterday that she would have to clean out her last pair almost every day, and that my mom refused to help her in any way because she didn't trust her friends and thought this would be a lesson to her on who to let inside our house. Eventually, I became a suspect. In hindsight, I was probably low on the list of suspects, and she was desperate. I shouldn't have said anything at all. Instead, I said, "Gee, that must really suck to have someone steal from your room. I can't even imagine." We locked eyes. She knew. I knew she knew. She knew that I knew that she knew. I gave her back her box. She stopped stealing from my room. We lived out the next year together in relative harmony. And things were resolved. Just, she got a taste of her own medicine and she learned from it. Thankfully. And I'm grateful that you got to find some peace out of it. And wow. Just really, it sounds like she would have been responsible if she had paid for that phone herself. I mean, was she even paying for the phone plan as well? Probably not. I think that would have been something if the stepdad and the mom just suspended her phone plan, but it's not clear in the story. But yeah, it's great that we get to hear a story where the lesson was learned.
Please like and subscribe if you made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day.
Story 3. My wedding was ruined by a jealous ex, and she decided to brag about this online. My husband and I have been married for 2 weeks, and I'm already having regrets. My husband's ex has really been making things difficult for us. She makes sure my stepchildren call me by first name rather than any term of endearment. Our wedding happened to fall on one of her days with the kids. My husband invited her for reasons I'm still unsure of. I was aware of her receiving an invitation, but my husband never informed me that she had accepted. She came with the kids an hour later. I assumed she was dropping them off, but she had intentions to stay. She was dressed more elegantly than me, and that felt off, so I asked her to leave. She disrespectfully told me that she would be staying. My husband and mother-in-law told me that she was like family and would not be leaving. I was disgusted by this because it was obvious what this woman was doing. She posted this story online, but in a way that made me out to be a toxic villain in the story. The story appeared on the popular page of the online site and was also on a friend's social media For You page. It wasn't hard to identify myself because I recognized the dress, and she also used my real name in the story. I don't understand why she's doing this because we had been civil with each other until now. And I'm very offended by the way she degraded me in her defensive comments and by the fact that my husband took her side. At this point, it sounds like a she said kind of situation. We don't know the full aspect of her story. We don't know the full aspect of your story. There's a lot of facts being thrown around here, and this is all just text on words, so it's really kind of hard to make any kind of a decision one way or the other. Kind of sorry what you're having to go through, but it kind of still sounds like the husband still has a deep involvement with the ex for some reason. Story 4. Manager told me to call the person on the computer I was working on, so I did. I was sitting in my office one slow day, and the CEO walked in. Always a pucker moment, even though I'm on very good terms with him, and he handed me an obviously non-business laptop and asked if I could get it back up and running, as it had very important things on it that were needed shortly, and as I wasn't doing anything, and he still signed my paycheck. I said, "You got it, sir." Later, a middle manager comes in and asks me to do something, and I say, "You're number 2 in line," and point to the obviously not corporate laptop I was fixing. Manager didn't like that much and demanded I call whoever and tell them that it wasn't acceptable for me to be working on personal equipment. So I pulled out my cell phone and called. Manager could only hear my half of the convo, but what he heard was something like, "Hey Tom, I got Bob here telling me it isn't acceptable for me to be working on your personal stuff, and he wanted me to call and tell you." "Oh sure, he's right here, hang on." And I handed the phone to the manager. Manager started off saying, "It's not acceptable," and then his eyes got real big, and the rest of the conversation was, "Yes, sir," and "No, sir." He hung up and thundered, "Why didn't you tell me it was the CEO's laptop?" And I said, "You didn't give me a chance and demanded I call them right now." "Exactly. Ask some questions first. Get some details. You want to know what you're getting into if you can ask a question like that. You want to be on a power trip? Well, you got trumped by someone more powerful. Sorry." Story 5. 10 years later, revenge on mother-in-law for Christmas dinner. About 10 years ago, I was invited to Christmas dinner at mother-in-law's house. Mother-in-law is an entitled man-hater and treats my wife like her own personal servant. Sit down for dinner, and there is absolutely nothing I can eat. Not just won't eat because I don't like it, but all foods that give me serious GI distress. Her attitude was that a guest should just eat what they're given. I pointed out to my wife that when she comes to my parents' house for dinner, my parents go out of their way to make sure they make something she will eat. My wife just doesn't like any red meat. Not can't eat it, but just doesn't. My parents always make sure there's another option for her. My wife says, well, her mother has a point. Yeah, the point is she's a rude, man-hating shrew. Well, last night she came over. My wife was at work until after dinner, so I purposely made something my mother-in-law hated. My daughter's favorite meal is sirloin steak, so I got to look like a doting father. Then I asked mother-in-law if she wanted some. She hates sirloin steak, so she didn't eat it. I politely said, "Oh, you should have told me you didn't eat steak." Revenge in this case was a dish served warm. Ooh. Yeah, kind of small there, but Yeah, you were caring for your daughter. And the mother-in-law, yeah, she doesn't want to provide for you. She doesn't want to make allowances for you that married into the family. Why should you make allowances for her? Kind of that simple, you know? You be nice, people will be nice back. Story 6. I regret getting married every single moment. I haven't even been married 6 months. I, 25 female, am leaving my husband, 30 male. Disclaimer. We have discussed monogamy in detail before we got married. We both agreed we were monogamous and wanted to be in a closed relationship. 1 month after our wedding, he asked if he could open up our marriage. This came out of nowhere, and I have been shocked and angry. I told him I was not comfortable with that, and he just told me to give it time. He has completely dismissed my apprehension and refuses to acknowledge my concerns. He tells me that he has not made moves on anyone, but he has swiped on dating apps with me in bed with him. He also flirts with coworkers of ours, ones who were at our wedding. Yesterday, I had someone ask if I had been the one to open the marriage, and I've never felt so betrayed and disrespected by my husband. He has told everyone we are in an open marriage. My stepmother is letting me stay with her for a few weeks, and I'm collecting my things this evening. I can't continue this anymore. I'm in the bathroom at work crying my eyes out. Yeah, there should have been there was discussion beforehand. It kind of sounds like now that he's got you locked down, he can just do whatever. It just sounds like it. He's going ahead and say, oh, she'll come around. No, doesn't sound like it. If you wanted an open relationship, you should have gone with someone else. You shouldn't have gotten married, and you shouldn't have been discussing monogamy this whole time. Story 7. Don't want to let me merge? Enjoy the tickets. So I drive a tow truck for a living. I was leaving the scene of an accident with a vehicle on the deck. All my lights are on and flashing, and this Megbox VW Jetta decides, frack you, I'm gonna speed match you so you can't merge. My lane is ending. My truck, over 20,000 pounds, and a Jetta is around 3,000 pounds. Prepare for the petty revenge. Instead of just going in behind him, I have the right of way as my lights are on, and the cop that was at the scene of the crash was watching this unfold. I decided, frack you, air horn time. Now, it's a Freightliner M2 with a 21-foot deck on it, so it's a decent-sized truck. I am on the air horn constantly now. My signal is on, and this jerkwad still thinks he won't be letting me over. I force my way in, as the truck isn't the fastest, but I'm the only one on the road to cover the entire city, so when it's busy and it's raining hard, seconds do count. The cop is getting irritated by jerkwad and Jetta. The cop's in a fully marked Explorer and decides, you want to be a jerk? Let's see how you like this one. Jetta is now tailgating me and has his phone in his hand taking pictures of my truck, and then when the road goes back to 2 lanes, Jetta aggressively swerves into the lane next to me and is taking pictures of the truck so he can complain about me. The cop is ticked off now and decides this guy needs a little reminder of the laws. The cop lights up this guy and pulls him over and gives him multiple tickets. Failure to yield to an emergency vehicle, failure to slow down and move over to flashing lights, using an electronic device while driving, failure to use signal during lane change, tailgating, driving without undue care and attention. The total is about $1,500 to $2,000 in fines for all of this combined. Maybe jerkwad should have just let me in, then he wouldn't be out of a buttload of money. I block traffic for the cops at night on blind corners to keep them safe. They watch my back and keep me safe. I have a video of the idiot getting pulled over, but I can't seem to attach it. Because everybody asks how I know he got fined. It's because I work with the same cops 4 nights a week, and there's only 4 cops on that shift. Yeah, again, be nice to people, people are nice to you. And this guy just thought he owned the road and had all of the juice when it came to complaining about this guy, thinking that he was going to get him like suspended or fired. But, dude, why? Why were you trying to cut this guy off in the first place? What was the reason? You should have just let the person pass. So simple. So simple just to slow down a bit. Just slow down a bit. That's all it took.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.